afternoon, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Last week, the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that embryos created through in vitro fertilization, or IVF, are children under state law, prompting a number of IVF providers across the state to suspend services as they consider the decision's legal consequences. This ruling is an outrage to hundreds of thousands of Americans who rely on IVF to have a family, and it demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of how pregnancy and fertility treatment work. IVF is a treatment for infertility and is used by women trying to get pregnant. It can be an important option for those struggling to have a baby naturally, but it's not a perfect solution. Most human embryos created through IVF naturally stop developing just days after fertilization. So many people undergoing fertility treatment must go through several IVF cycles before they become pregnant. IVF patients will often freeze multiple embryos to increase the chances of success. Of course, this also means that in the event of a successful pregnancy, one or more embryos may need to be discarded. The Alabama Supreme Court opens a huge potential for legal liability for IVF clinics and practitioners. Under the court's expanded definition of child, any embryos that are damaged during the IVF procedure may become the center of a wrongful death case. As a result, almost half the IVF providers in Alabama have paused their services, limiting access to fertility treatment options. As a result of this decision, liability costs for IVF in Alabama could increase dramatically, putting treatment out of reach for average families. Medical providers throughout the state might hesitate to perform infertility treatments for fear of being held liable when embryos do not turn into a successful pregnancy. Clinics could be forced to deny services to women with a higher risk of unsuccessful IVF treatments. For many prospective parents, IVF is a last-ditch effort to have a family, and preventing them from accessing the treatments they need is not only cruel, but it's absurd. This ruling is a threat to reproductive health everywhere, and it is concerning because it could embolden other states across the country to follow suit. Make no mistake, those seeking to deny women their right to reproductive freedom and bodily autonomy will try to use this ruling to advance their agenda. It's imperative that Congress take action to protect women across the country and limit the fallout of this disastrous decision. It's why I'm an original co-sponsor of Access to Family Planning Building Act, legislation that would preempt state and local laws that restrict access to assisted reproductive technology services like IVF. It would establish an individual right to access these important services while protecting a medical provider's right to provide them and safeguarding an insurance carrier's right to cover them. It would authorize the Department of Justice to enforce the bill's requirements and empower patients and providers to initiate civil action to preserve the right to receive those services. When and how people decide to start to grow their family is a deeply personal choice, and we should be standing in the way of those who are doing everything they can to have a baby. We need to pass the Access to Family Building Act as soon as possible for the hundreds of thousands of Americans who rely on IVF. And we need to do everything we can to protect the fundamental right to choose in Alabama and across the country. Happy to answer your questions.
Senator Terry Frank in Jamestown.
Hi, Terry.
Wanted to ask, are there any other sponsors? How many people have signed on to this bill?
So far, it's Senator Duckworth, Murray, Baldwin in the Senate, and in the House. It's a long list of support. Are any Republicans in the House?
Yes, there's one Republican from Tampa.
What's his person's name? There's one Republican from the House on the bill.
And just actually, we've added a couple of sponsors since yesterday. So Terry, I can send them to you, or Isha can.
Who are they?
Great,
Evan?
Thank you.
Evan, who are the extras?
Yeah, give me just 1 second and I will pull it up. They are, oh my God, it's a giant list. Duckworth, Murray, Baldwin, Shaheen, Warren, Coons, Markey, Brown, Heinrich. I won't go through the whole thing, Terry, I'll send it to you, but there's probably about 15 other senators who have joined.
Any Republicans yet, Evan?
No Republicans other than Anna Paulina Luna in the House.
Okay.
But a number of them have said positive things about IVF, including, I believe Mitt Romney said he wouldn't have several of his grandchildren if he, without IVF.
Mhm.